Hey guys, what I wanted to talk about today is something that sometimes I completely forget that not everyone knows. I guess I've been talking about this stuff for so long and writing about this stuff that I get into this mind state of assuming like everyone knows what I know. And kind of what snapped me out of that was I got a question from someone today that said, essentially, what is the point of even doing magic? Why am I doing this? So I started writing about that, about exactly why we do this work, what it's for. And I want to talk about that just in case maybe there's somebody else that's wondering the same thing. So, what's the point of doing magic? People love to romanticize magic. They imagine robes, incense, exotic words whispered in candlelight, mystery for the sake of mystery. For some, it's about aesthetics. For others, it's about power. They want to bend the universe to their will, summon forces, gain secret knowledge. But strip all that away, and the question remains, what's the point? What's the point of doing magic? And the answer is simpler and harder than most people want to hear. The real answer is to transform the self. And through that transformation of the self, to transform reality. Everything else, the rituals, the tools, the planetary correspondences, and secret names, all of it is just scaffolding for that one purpose. Magic is about changing consciousness. Aleister Crowley defined magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. Most people latch on to the causing change part, imagining external results, money, love, influence. But the real power is in the part that they overlook, which is will. Your will isn't your passing desires. It's not, I want a new car or I hope this job works out. Will is the deep current of your being, the blueprint for what you can become. Magic trains you to align with that current, to burn away the noise of conditioning, of fear, of distraction, so that you can move like a blade through water. The first and greatest change magic causes is within you. Everything else, manifestation, synchronicity, improbable events, it's all secondary and even incidental. Why does ritual exist? It's basically a kind of scaffolding for that transformation. People ask, if it's about inner change, then why all of this elaborate ritual? The answer is because the human nervous system doesn't rewire itself through theory. Symbols bypass the analytical mind and strike the subconscious. Rituals engage the body, the emotions, and the imagination all at one time. They create a sensory language that speaks to layers of the psyche that words can't reach. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, for example, first thing everybody learns who starts doing this work. It isn't just waving your arms around and chanting names. It's a full body invocation of order over chaos, done so often that it becomes muscle memory, not just in the body, but in the mind. Over time, you carry that structure into every interaction that you have with this world. Ritual is like the dojo of the soul. You repeat the forms until they start to shape you. Here's where most people misunderstand magic. They treat the ritual like the destination instead of the bridge. The point is not to keep casting circles forever. The point is to build a mind so disciplined, so focused that the circle dissolves because you've become the circle. Zen has the exact same concept. At first, you cling to and do zazen constantly. Zazen is a kind of formal sitting meditation that you're taught in Zen. Later, you realize the sitting was just the scaffolding. The real zazen is washing your dishes, walking down the street, breathing, when every single act becomes an unbroken prayer. Magic works the same way. You start with robes and wands because the raw psyche needs structure. But if you're really doing the work, there comes a point where life itself is going to become the ritual. The invocation isn't in a script, it's in how you move through the world. And the alchemical formula that's behind magic, alchemy sums it up in two words: solve and coagula, dissolve and recombine. Solve means to break down the false self, the ego masks, the conditionings, the illusions. Magic does this by forcing you to confront your fragmentation. You learn where you lack will, where fear grips you, and where laziness hides inside you. What coagula does is reassembles what remains into a higher order, a self aligned with will, integrated and awake. Every banishing is a dissolution. Every invocation is a coagulation. Every ritual is symbolic death and rebirth, enacted in miniature until it becomes the real deal. At its highest, magic mirrors the entire magnum opus. The Negredo, or the blackening stage, which is chaos and the breakdown of old structures. Albedo, or the whitening stage, which is purification through discipline and clarity. And Rubedo, the reddening, integration, the union of spirit and matter. And this is the stage where life itself becomes the temple. The common pitfall for a lot of people is getting stuck in the aesthetics of magic. And you see this all the time on social media. Most people never get beyond the surface. They treat magic like spiritual cosplay, an identity, a community badge, an excuse to feel different. They memorize correspondences, collect tools, argue endlessly about all the different systems, but you notice the people never actually change. This isn't new. This isn't a new thing. It's the same trap Jesus was warning about when he was talking about confusing the letter of something for the spirit. Performing the outward form while missing the inner transformation that it's supposed to bring about. Real magic is uncomfortable. It dismantles you. It asks for sacrifice, not goats or blood or any of that crazy stuff you see on TV, but illusions, excuses, and everything in you that resists growing. It will strip you down and burn what's false. Most people really don't want that. They want power without process. They want gold, but without the furnace. So why bother at all? Why go through the rituals, the study, the discipline? Because without structure, most people just drift through the world. They drift through life. The ego will resist dissolution. It clings to habits like barnacles on a hull. Magic applies pressure. It creates deliberate friction so you evolve on purpose instead of by accident. Most people evolve only by accident. When you practice magic, you're saying, I refuse to sleepwalk through my existence. I refuse to let entropy win. I choose to create. That's why magic feels rebellious. It's a revolt against passivity, against being a passenger in your own life. It's the decision to become a conscious participant in the unfolding of reality, starting with the hardest terrain of all, yourself. So beyond magic, where does this path lead? So here's the irony. If you keep doing magic long enough, one day you'll stop. Not because you quit doing the work with a capital W, the great work, but because you've integrated it so deeply that the formal practice becomes unnecessary. The circle becomes your body. The temple becomes your breath. The divine names echo in how you move through the world. This is what mystics in every tradition discover. The raft is burned when you reach the other shore. The tools serve their purpose. You don't cling to the crucible once the stone is formed. What I'm talking about the raft is burned, this comes from the Diamond Sutra in Buddhism. They talk about using a raft to cross a river from one bank to the other. This is the same thing in magic that we're talking about when we're talking about crossing the abyss. You use these rituals to cross the abyss. The rituals are the raft. When you get to the other side, you don't drag the raft on land and keep carrying it with you. You burn it. You discard it. You don't need it anymore. The goal was never the ritual. The goal was presence, embodied presence, freedom, and wholeness. That's the point of magic. And that's why the highest act of magic is eventually to outgrow it. So here's a question to think about. Maybe you want to journal about this. I am a big believer in journaling. I think it helps us to articulate things that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do otherwise. But the thing to ask yourself and to write about is, if magic worked exactly as promised, if it could dissolve your illusions and rebuild you as something rare and whole, what would you become? Because that's the point. Not spells, not smoke, not showmanship. Transformation. That's always been the point of all of this. Transformation, to transform ourselves. And I actually also wrote another piece that's like a companion to this essay that I'll also want to read to you, that I'll get to later, but it's about why I no longer practice these rituals. And you notice I go into that a little bit in here when I talk about burning the raft, but I'm going to go deeper into that and what those rituals were replaced with for me. I just want to say in closing, thank you for supporting me. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for caring about the things that I have to talk about. I appreciate your presence in my life very much, and I will talk to you again very soon. Take care.